Good morning, everybody. This is the news that we are waking up to for Wednesday, December the 4th, 2024, day 1015 of the full scale invasion. Last night, the Russian Federation sent 50 attack drones of the Shahed 131 136 class against the territory of Ukraine, along with one KH 5969 missile. Now, usually they shoot those down, but this one got through. Of the 50 drones, 29 were shot down by air defense and mobile air defense units. Another 18 were lost due to electronic warfare. And at least one was returned to the temporarily occupied territories. Now, again, with those lost drones, we don't know how many of them are just fallen out of the sky and how many are headed to Belarus. But regardless, every one that gets turned around and sent back to Russia or sent to Belarus doesn't just eliminate the threat uh, against the Ukrainians, but serves the dual purpose of tying up air defense in the aggressor nations. And that's good for everybody. Now, yesterday, in the news we are waking up to, we knew that Russia had pledged to send mercenaries to Syria. What we did not know at that time uh, was who they were. And who they are the Africa Corps. Now, I think this is so important to understand. And tonight on the live, I'm going to do kind of a broad overview of Wagner activities in Africa. Because Wagner in Africa has since become the Africa Corps. And if you're having flashbacks to Rommel, you can be forgiven because, of course, Hitler's North African campaign was conducted by what he called the Africa Corps. So this is a terrible name, but it is certainly revealing of where the Russians are at. This picture was taken in the spring of 2021 when representatives of Mali traveled to Moscow and signed the contract with Wagner. You'll note the presence of the Russian state flag and the Malayan flag. And this is back in 2021. This is back when Russia was still denying that it had any official connection to Wagner, that it was a private military company, right? Yevgeny Prigozhin's baby, not an arm of the Kremlin, which it most certainly has been revealed to be. Now, just as a prelude to tonight's look at Wagner in Africa, let's talk about Mali. The French colonization of Africa in the 19th century lasted right up until 10 years ago. And it's only 10 years ago that France withdrew from its former colonies. They had been supporting them, managing them, governing them for 100 years. This left a power vacuum where many of these states, like Mali in 2012, fell into civil war and created an environment where Russia could come in a supporting role. So, what happened after this meeting of the Russians and the Malayans in Moscow in 2021? On September 30th of 2021, the Malayans took their first delivery of arms, ammunition, and 4 Mi-17 helicopters from the Russians. The Mi-17 is just Russia's export version of the Mi-8. The Minister of Defense for Mali praised Russia as a friend with whom they had a long-standing history of supportive and mutually beneficial relationships, and that he hoped that that would last far into the future. 2021. Now, the Malayans Mali is ruled by a military junta that's been in power for about 10 years, little longer, since the civil war really began. They turned to Russia not just for weapons and ammunition, but for boots on the ground, trainers that would train the Malayan forces. And so it is believed that about 1,000 Wagner PMC mercenaries went into Mali to train those forces sometime in late 2021. By spring of 2022, April of 2022, Human Rights Watch um, files a brief in which they accuse the Wagner PMC of the murder of over 300 civilians in the north of the country where the Tuareg rebels uh, are based. By June of 2022, less than 1 year after this signing ceremony in Moscow, there are accusations in the northern territories of mass arrests, looting of villages and towns by the Wagnerites, rape used as a weapon of war to intimidate and drive the locals out of the country as refugees into neighboring Mauritania, as well as accusations of mass murder like the 300 civilians that Human Rights Watch accused them of in April. This goes on it's been going on since, this kind of thing. Now, you may remember just in July of this past year, the Wagnerites were handed their first serious defeat at the hands of Tuareg rebels and another Islamist group in the north, supported by Ukrainian intelligence. The GUR Kaminsk group was there, and they provided intelligence and maybe drone support. It's not clear, and the GUR isn't saying. But in that engagement, the rebels ambushed the Malayan and Russian forces and decimated them. Now, this is just one example, one country that Wagner PMC is operating in Africa and the damage that they are doing. They're in a dozen countries, and we'll talk about that tonight on the live. In terms of the Syrian implications, I want to highlight. We think that at the start of the full-scale invasion, there may have been as many as 50,000 Wagnerites in Africa. We believe that at least 20,000 of them were recalled to Kursk and are likely in Kursk and Bryansk now, or engaged in active combat there. That means that those dozen countries where the governments are being propped up by these thugs, if Russia's pulling them out because it needs them in Kursk and needs them in Syria, what's going to happen in Africa? You think the Tuareg rebels aren't counting the Russian heads, waiting to see if what happened in Syria might happen there? You know they are. You know they are. This thing is going to expand. The violence is going to expand. Other rebel groups are going to see the opportunity that the Syrian rebels saw. The Syrian rebels saw the two main forces that support Bashar al-Assad. The Russians leave to go fight in Ukraine, pulled a lot of their equipment to go fight in Ukraine, and then watched Israel decimate the Hezbollah forces, the other major prop for the Bashar al-Assad regime, and they took their chance. Again, supported by Ukrainians. The Ukrainians right now, again, Syria was not on my bingo card. Never saw it coming. Even though I reported back in September about the attack on the Russian base there by the Ukrainian forces. Knew they were there. Who saw all of this coming? Budanov, the head of military intelligence directorate in Ukraine. General Budanov saw it coming, and he put just enough men in these foreign places where the Russians are to make a difference, to tip the scales. It's brilliant. And this is why I say we must trust the Ukrainians to conduct these operations and this war as they see fit. And we cannot let a Trump regime abandon them. Can't do it. We got to figure something out here. Got to figure something out. Okay. We'll talk more about Wagner in Africa tonight. Again, the only reason that HTS and the other rebel groups supported by Ukrainian GUR forces are making progress in Syria is because Putin essentially pulled out of Syria, and because of other decisions he made, his other supporters were all eliminated. Master strategist, boy. Now he's got to pull the guys from Africa. And what's going to happen there? We shall see. Now, last night, here I can play this for you. Last night, in the largest display of force yet, the police went out to clear the streets and break up the protesters. We're going to see this morning what the people's response to this is. It boggles my mind every time I see something like this. Just like it did in the United States under Trump, when the military was used to clear that park so that he could have his photo op in front of a church. I don't understand the men who enforce these rules. These are Georgians. Every one of these cops has sisters, cousins, brothers, friends who could be in the crowd protesting. How do they fire on them? How do they not turn their guns on the people who are trying to steal their future? I do not understand it. I will never understand it. But that's what's going on in Georgia. Now, what the response will be today, we'll see. In Novorossiysk, which is the port across the Black Sea from the Crimean Peninsula, where most of the Black Sea fleet, the larger vessels of the Black Sea fleet, have retreated to. It's where the only missile-carrying ships left in the Black Sea of the Russian Federation are. There was drone activity last night, and you can get a sense from this of explosions in the distance and car alarms getting turned on, that kind of thing. We don't know what was hit. We're waiting to hear on if anything was hit. But there was clearly a scaled drone attack against the Russian Federation last night by the Ukrainians. We know that air defense was active not just over the port of Novorossiysk, but over Rostov, Bryansk, Belgorod, Ryazan, Astrakhan, Kaluga, and Krasnodar Krai. So over most of Western Russia, Ukrainian drones were looking for targets last night. And we'll see if they hit anything probably later today. Finally, this boat shoe clad buffoon is back at it again. Tucker Carlson is headed to Moscow, where he can sit at the feet of Sergei Lavrov this time. He's out of favor with Putin after the disastrous interview they did last time. But he's going to talk to Lavrov, and Lavrov will give him the opportunity to mindlessly parrot our enemy's talking points so that we preemptively surrender to our betters in the Kremlin. Disgusting. Just disgusting, this piece of shit. I hate him so much. Uh, oh, I forgot about Namibia. Namibia, the southern African nation on the Atlantic Ocean, right? Southwest Africa. Just did what America couldn't bring itself to do and elected their first female president. Madam President, our hearty congratulations. So, Namibia, an African nation, has elected its first female president, while the United States, rather than elect a competent black woman, chose a, a rapist felon for the highest office in the land. You're really giving the world hope these days, America. Out fucking rageous. And that's it for me on the morning of December the 4th, 2024, day 1015 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. We'll see you all soon.